Thank you for joining us on Health Diary. My name is Gladys Gashanj and we're coming to you from the Grammar Suite here in Nairobi. Now, the World Health Organization estimates that 10% of pregnant women and 13% of those that have children or give birth suffer from a mental disorder. Now, worldwide, this is depression, and in this case, we'll be talking about postpartum depression. It is a reality. Just because you can't see it, it actually exists, and also it is not the fault of a mother or a weakness in her part, as some people think. That conversation coming up right after the fact of the matter. According to the World Health Organization, as many as 1 in 5 women develop a mental health problem during pregnancy or in the first year after delivery of their child. Postpartum depression, abbreviated as PPD, is a form of major depression that has its onset within 4 weeks after delivery. Postpartum depression greatly affects the normal functioning of the affected mothers, as the symptoms may lead to poor bonding with the baby and difficulties with breastfeeding. Maternal mental disorders are treatable, but unfortunately very few women who experience mental health symptoms are ever referred for specialist mental health care. Postpartum depression can be treated with medication and or counseling.
My name is Lindsay Kenneth, a postpartum depression survivor, mother of 2 amazing girls. My postpartum depression became more apparent with my firstborn because we didn't sleep the first few months. She was a colicky baby, and with every new parent you're anxious. I waited for the spark that everybody speaks about when you get your baby. I didn't get that. Fortunately, I had the support of my husband, but he noticed there was something beyond baby blues. But the very first time something was off is when she fell. It was about 3 or 4 months she fell from the seat. The way I reacted, my husband just knew I cried for 3 days straight. But because depression is not something that is spoken about, you don't want to you feel like a failure. Why should I accept? I went to my first doctor and he's like, you're fine. Of course, having a baby isolates you. People stop visiting, people are busy just asking you, hi, how are you? How is the baby? Nobody asks you, how are you? The second pregnancy was very hard. So that also added to the pressure. I managed to keep this up because I would go to counselors and they would tell me, you're the one who's not appreciating this gift. But to me, it's not a gift. What is this gift I have been given? I didn't also bond with this second baby. It may have affected now the fact that I didn't have milk. One time she choked on milk and she was practically dead for 3 minutes. That is the most traumatizing thing I ever went through. With postpartum depression, it makes you feel guilty for everything wrong that happens to your child. Even if you have this perfect circumstances, we can put on our face. I was the people you'd never know. I have this face I put on, but you didn't know that after I leave, something would go on. Especially the suicidal thoughts is when people realized, wow, this was heavy. I share my story to just let people know there's no that you will get depression and you won't. It's not written anywhere. But if we talk more about it, a lot more moms will be aware of it.
So as many as 1 in every 5 women experiences mental illness during pregnancy or after pregnancy. Something that most people don't understand, and that's why we need to have that vital conversation today. And to help me do that, I've got Gakenya Mwangi, who is a lady who has gone through postpartum depression and still in recovery. And of course, we have Dr. Diana Chepkoskei, who is a psychologist. Thank you for joining us, ladies. Now, I'll start off with you, Daktari. Postpartum depression, some people would say, is like baby blues. You know, you come home with a baby and you're having a hard time adjusting to a new baby at home. How can you tell the difference?
Postpartum depression is a perinatal mood disorder, and it develops 6 weeks after childbirth. But baby blues is the normal, teary, emotional period that happens 10 days after childbirth. But when it comes to postpartum depression, it's whereby there's a kind of depression that sets in, becomes more severe, and it's long-term. So when it gets to 6 weeks and you realize you're still very emotional, you have mood swings, and you're super teary and easily irritable, that's where there's an issue, probably is postpartum depression.
What's the difference between postpartum depression and postpartum psychosis?
Both of them are mood disorders, but postpartum psychosis is a severe form of postpartum depression. The difference is postpartum psychosis, there's a lot of confusion, there's a lot of detachment from reality. A person becomes very irritable, very aggressive. They're even able to harm their baby. They're completely detached to the baby, and they can even think of suicidal thoughts. So it's an advanced stage of mood disorder. Yeah.
And does that need you to probably be hospitalized?
Yes, with postpartum psychosis, you might have to include medical therapy to stabilize the symptoms. But it's something that is manageable, it's treatable. It can take 1 to 2 years. That is if it has been identified later on. But if you're able to identify, hey, there's a problem, probably I need to get checked.
Now, postpartum is triggered by different things. I mean, we said it could be the pregnancy, it could be the baby coming and you don't know what's going on, but also it could be triggered by miscarriages, stillbirths. Now, Gakenia, you have an experience of this nature. Share that with us.
The first one was a miscarriage last year in July at 9 weeks. I had an infection that triggered the baby to come out, but baby didn't come out quite properly, so I had to get an MVA. So around 4 or 5 months later, that was in November, I got pregnant again. And you know the scary part of having a baby after you've lost one, you're thinking, am I going to carry this baby to term? What is going to happen? So come January, I got a bit unwell, so to speak. And when I went to hospital, they told me that my baby had died in utero and was not growing as expected. I was at 12 weeks, but the scan showed that the baby was still at 8 weeks. So they still had to induce labor and clean again. This was now a missed abortion. And the trauma that comes with now knowing that you feel like you cannot carry a baby to term. I already have one child who will be 8 years this year, September. But then you expect that since the first one was very easy, I mean, ni mimba too, I'm just going to carry it to term. But thankfully there's therapy. And you know, like for me, I realized after the second one, because the first one I didn't go for therapy at all. I was like, these things happen, I can just move on and get another pregnancy. So when it happened the second time, I realized I can't cope.
Now, Daktari, she talks about some of the triggers, a miscarriage, a missed abortion. There are other triggers that bring about postpartum depression. What are these and what should we look out for?
Issues like childhood trauma. We really go back to the past. How was your growing up? You know, maybe you were abused emotionally, sexually, and you never had the opportunity to process that kind of trauma. It can contribute to postpartum depression later on in life. And also the point you got pregnant, were you expecting that baby? How was your marriage life at that time? Was your partner supportive during the pregnancy journey? Did you go through any kind of violence, any kind of trauma? So societal kind of stressors contribute to postpartum depression.
Okay, Gakeni, just listening to the Daktari, do any of those ring a bell?
Not really, because I'm thinking for me, I don't know how to put it. Let me just say, I knew at the very second time it happened, I just knew something was not right. So for me, the minute I lost this second baby, actually the minute I was told that they have to clean me, that's when I knew I need help. Because it was all these emotions, and now you're waiting for people to come and support you, and some people don't understand. which is quite difficult. They actually start saying, making it look like you're the one who's to blame because this is the second one. What's going on with you? Yeah.
Or what's wrong with you?
Yes.
Okay, so what can you pinpoint that made you feel removed from normal, as you put it?
I remember at the hospital, the ward where I was in, I was alone. I didn't want to see anyone. I didn't want to pick calls. I actually wanted just to switch off my phone and throw it away. That's when I knew that I actually have a problem.
The reality of PPD in her case, as the person who took a child home and is dealing with what the circumstances are the same, yeah?
The experience she had, that kind of depression she had after the miscarriage, is the same kind of depression that even women who have been able to carry their babies go through. Yeah, so I wouldn't say I don't say that I wouldn't legitimize that kind of depression because she has no baby. She will also experience that. Now she's dealing with loss. She's dealing with depression. I haven't been able to carry the 2 babies. I haven't been able to connect with them physically, yet they were inside of me. Yeah, so the depression is still the same. It happens. And also for this kind of case, it's worse because you're also dealing with grief. Grief which hasn't been processed from the past, and this is another type of loss. Yeah.
Now, postpartum depression, or PPD as we call it at times, has been associated with other issues, myths and cultures. You were bewitched, something happened to you, you ate something wrong, and the list goes on and on. Now, when we come back, Gakenia will give us an experience of what she had to face right after her 2 episodes, right after this break. Thank you for staying with Health Diary. Our conversation today, postpartum depression, PPD if you may call it, and still with me, Dr. Chepkoskei, and of course we still have Gakenia, and the stigma that comes with postpartum depression. To first start with, there's some people who don't believe there's such a thing that exists. They will say it's a mother who is weak or has personality issues. They should be able to handle it. For you, Gakenia, it must have been a bit more worse, considering that you had lost 2 children and you really didn't have anything to show that would have spiked, the depression, the changes that a child brings in the home. What are some of the things you faced?
When I was pregnant, there are very few people who knew that I was pregnant. For instance, my parents got to know that I was pregnant around the time that I was losing the baby, this second one. The very first one, they didn't even know that I was pregnant. I got pregnant. Just as I was about to tell them, I lost the baby, and then I just hushed it. I didn't tell them. But there's a very close friend of mine who knew what was going on. And for her, she's been there throughout. She supports me, lets me vent the way I want to vent. And she's generally been supportive. But I remember the second one of my aunties, now an aunt to the father of my baby, was actually asking what's wrong with her, her first child, her second child, and she was asking that to my sister-in-law. And she didn't think it would get to me. And the worst thing was I was working with her. So for me, especially with after the first one, I didn't get to tell so many people that I was pregnant. So actually, most people have come to find out that I have lost 2 babies after the first interview on NTV. And even then, I have been dodging questions because there are people who generally don't have manners, if I should call it that.
Yeah.
They will start asking you very weird questions. But in terms of trauma, at least for me, I think it's only my auntie who brought out trauma.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, Dr. she talks about her experience. You have another mother who has this child. She's going through PPD. People are coming to see the child, asking about how the child is doing, but never ask about the mother, which is normally the case in our setup. What should people understand when a new mother brings a child home?
Motherhood is beautiful, and it comes along with a lot of emotional changes. You're excited, you're looking forward to this, But you know, even as mothers, naturally the hormonal production reduces, and that's why it also contributes to the emotional changes that they go through. And people wouldn't understand. They expect you to be happy, like you're a mother. They expect you to even to continue keeping the house clean and even take care of the baby at the same time. And you know, the focus is on the baby, and there's little attention about how the mother is coping. How are you faring on? How are you emotionally? How are you coping with the changes? You know, and people and the moms will be like so embarrassed to talk about how they feel. We need to educate the society that these emotional changes that does happen because of various reasons, and it's not that the moms are to blame to like contributing to these reasons happening, but let us create that environment for them to communicate how they feel. So how about go and do something in the house and stop judging these moms? It's normal.
We never ask about the father. If anything, he's patted on the back, good job, and it ends at that point. But just as you are dealing with the changes of pregnancy, this man walks a certain change too. What are some of the experiences you had in your case?
Normally, I have a very weird appetite when I'm pregnant. So I would wake up at 3 a.m. to take tea. And that means he has to wake up as well, because I'm not waking up alone. But at least he was there. But for now, the consecutive losses, I didn't know they had an impact on him until the second time we lost the baby. He lost it. He couldn't even come to the hospital. He couldn't come to the hospital. At some point, he actually even switched off his phone. So I was in the hospital alone. So now he's been going through therapy, trying to deal with the losses, because you know, for men, they're told, you're a strong man, jikaze, move on. But then we need to realize that men have feelings, and they also get hurt, and they bond with the babies in their own special way. In as much as they're not carrying the babies, they bond with the babies. Some of them will play with the belly, as small as it is. They start thinking, now I have to think of buying diapers. A few years, there's school, there's hospital bills. So they start living like someone's father. And then you tell them that there's no baby that is coming. Then they have to go back to square one, start planning again. And it takes a toll on them.
So what kind of support should we offer the fathers, Dr.
When they go through loss, they also grieve. They also go through paternal postpartum depression. Yes, they do. Because this is a new role, new responsibility, maybe taking shifts of waking up at night to help the mom when the baby cries. So what I think the society should do, again, and also for the mom, to create that environment for the man to communicate how he feels, and even linking up with the close friends, whereby allow him to hang out with the friends as well, because men don't do well with this kind of conversation face to face. They do well with a shoulder kind of hanging out. Let's watch a game, let's go out for nyama choma, and they wouldn't like say exactly what they are going through, because they go into a cave and they don't want anyone to disturb them. So create that environment for them.
Okay, now let's talk about the support system. How was the workplace? Did they take time to give you time to grieve?
I actually got a 1 month leave, paid leave, from my office where I was working. But since I was working in a dialysis center, which is more or less like a hospital, I couldn't, even when I went back, I couldn't stay for too long, because the thought of going back to a hospital setting again was just too traumatizing. So I didn't stay for too long. I had to quit my job. But I remember my workmates would call me every day. They'd check up on me, because we had 2 nurses. And I remember there was one of them who we were pregnant together. She actually has her child right now. But I remember she used to call me, check up on me, ask me, how are you doing? How's everything? How are you feeling? So they are really supportive.
And in the case of the mother who is going through PPD with a child in the house?
it is in line even with the policy for the HR to allow this mom to have at least an extra month off just to settle down and get help, professional help, maybe a psychiatrist, a psychologist, to help her process those kind of feelings. Yeah.
And speaking of professional help, we met 2 months ago, and looking at you now, there's a huge difference. And counseling has been a great pillar to that. Speak on the importance of the same.
When I knew that I had a problem, I think I'd seen Still a Mom on Twitter. So I reached out to them, and luckily enough, or should I say they are very competent, they reached back to me, and I've been going for group therapy. So meeting other moms, even if it's online, just talking, sharing your story, someone else shares their story, you also know that you're not alone. But having people to talk to who have been in the same situation as you, and you have a counselor who's guiding you and telling you it is okay to feel this, you need to deal with this. But now meeting different women and just talking, let me just say it's very therapeutic. And I am so glad that I got the chance to work with Still a Mom.
And I'm so glad to see you smiling. Yeah.
Thank you.
So, Dr. even as we wrap up this conversation, your clarion call to society in as far as supporting moms that are pregnant is concerned, and those that have children or lose some of these children, because some, they believe she's a weak woman. Ni wengi sana wamepata watoto, kwani nini different with them?
Seeking help is not an act of weakness. It's an act of strength whereby you realize there's a problem and I need to be supported. And going through postpartum depression, it's normal. There are many women who have gone through, and the unfortunate bit, people suffer in silence because first, there's minimal opportunities of support whereby they can talk about how they feel, and even with counseling. So what I would like to say, please reach out. There's help, counseling helps, and I know it seems like it's awkward at first, but it makes you aware of how you feel. It makes you acknowledge your emotional state, and through that you're able to process and even develop healthy ways of coping, especially with postpartum depression. You learn on how best can I cope with this depression, and even with grief, how best can I cope with this grief, because it does take time. It's different for everyone, but taking that first step of coming for therapy, that's a plus and the beginning of your healing journey.
Definitely. Kezia, or Gakenya Mwangi, as we call you now, and Diana Chepkosgei, doctor who is a psychologist. Thank you for your time and such great revelations in as far as postpartum depression is concerned. Remember, it is not the weakness of a mother or a personality issue. It actually is real. Depression, mental health of any kind is real. Just because you can't see it doesn't mean it does not exist. Well, time for the health tip.
Keeping a healthy mind can be done by doing the things that you love. Learn about yourself and what makes you happy, and try and do that on a day-to-day basis if you can. Whether it is cooking the food that you love, or reading a book that interests you, doing an activity like going hiking or swimming that you like to do, that can be very, very helpful for you keeping a healthy mind.
Well, PPD, postpartum depression, definitely generating a lot of conversations on our social media handles. Remember, if you'd like to get in touch with the Still a Mom organization or Dr. Chepkosgei and even Gakenya Mwangi on a support system on the same, please do so and we shall hook you up with them. It has been Health Diary coming to you from the Grammar Suites here in Nairobi. My name is Gladys Gashanja. See you. .13% rather. Shoot!